This is George LaRocque, Principal Analyst and Founder with HR Wins.
And this is Martin Burns, Vice President from the Recruitment Services and Advisory Services firm HRtech.
And I'm Chris Russell. It's time for our mid-year recap, next on the RecTech podcast.
Welcome to RecTech, the podcast where recruiting and technology intersect. Each month, you'll hear from vendors shaping the recruiting world, along with recruiters who'll tell you how they use technology to hire talent. Now, here's your host, the mad scientist of online recruiting, Chris Russell.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome to RecTech, the only podcast that helps employers and recruiters connect with more candidates through technology-inspired conversations. Recruiting is getting more technical in nature these days, so it's important for recruiters to stay up to date on the new tools and tactics for recruiting success. Today's show is more of a vendor edition. But first, the RecTech podcast is sponsored by our friends at HRtool, the recruiter's best friend. HRtool's AI engine is a personal sourcing assistant that works for you 24/7. Check out their new version 3 with a new reporting dashboard, email marketing campaigns, where you can automate and track email response rates. They've also redesigned the toolbox area to include more automation and even updated their Boolean string functionality. So find them on the web at HRtool.com. That's HIRETUAL.com. And a reminder, this show is now syndicated on the HR Podcasters Network. Head over to HRpodcasters.com. You can find this show and discover over 24 others that cover nearly every topic in HR and recruiting. Again, check it out at HRpodcasters.com. All right, let's bring back our guests, Martin Burns and George LaRocque. Welcome back to RecTech.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah. So we spoke about 6 months ago. We did our first a year-end recap back in late December, early January there. Definitely a good show. Probably one of the top 10 so far this year in terms of downloads. Good stuff, guys. Let's start out by, we're going to kind of talk about some of the news in the industry lately. George's going to give us a rundown of some of the HRtech funding. And we're not going to talk about GDPR, so guys, don't bring that up.
We might.
Let me cross that out of my notes.
I had a whole thing planned.
If I get one more email talking about our privacy, I'm going to delete my account. So, all right. Well, what's new in your world, guys? Tell me what's kind of top of mind for each of you.
George, to be honest. What do you think? So what's new on my end? All kinds of stuff. And not just personally, but as far as like tech goes and the industry. Last week, just to kind of key off what happened last week, at least for me, a lot going on with job descriptions of all things, and I'm seeing that coming up more and more. I know the Textio made a big splash earlier in the year, or I guess last year, and then they jacked the prices up through the roof and kind of killed themselves as far as our industry goes. But I think maybe they're pivoting to sales and marketing. But all that said, huge need for tools around job descriptions, and I think finding awareness of how important they are, and that they really shouldn't be called job descriptions; they should be called job advertisements,
yes.
And definitely not job recs. So I'm seeing an evolution happening, and I'm getting a lot of, we are on the consultant side, a lot of calls from clients asking for help with the job families, their descriptions, their approach, their strategy, the language, the copywriting help. So they're getting more strategic around it. And while I do think that job ads / descriptions are, they're a tactic, they're a really important tactic. They're not fully strategic. The strategy is your overall brand and your voice, et cetera. But they're a huge part of it. And without them, I think you can't really be successful. So I think we're finally seeing the industry or our clients and hiring managers getting more serious about fixing that what I think is a glaring issue. So That's on my mind right now.
Yeah, I did hear Textio. Everyone's complaining about their pricing, which is interesting. They're kind of the only game in the market, so I guess they get away with it. But there's definitely room for an entry-level player there.
Yeah, no, there are a couple coming up. There are more tools kind of rolling out. I think Textio is planning on pivoting and trying to become more of a marketing sales collateral tool. Just so process with either pockets.
I just saw a new tool called Copywriter from some ad agency. I don't know what it does or how it works, but they claim to have some kind of like job description wizard or something. I think it's at jobwriter.io or something like that. But yeah, there's been a lack of job description tools out there.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience lately where I've been in the last month, let's say 6 weeks. I've probably sat with 25 to 30 HR and talent leaders, and the issue of job descriptions has come up. It's followed by feedback on pricing for Textio, as you mentioned, and it's normally, compared to the fact that they can you can actually hire a freelance writer who understands how to write a good ad, and it's more cost effective. So when your pricing is sort of not better than what you could do manually, that's a challenge. So not to pick on them, but it's interesting to hear you say that. I've heard it. There's an undercurrent out there, and there is an opportunity, I think, for somebody to tackle that market.
Mm-hmm.
Hiring a copywriter is simple. I mean, it's that could be the killer idea there. You just hire a copywriter, right?
Yeah, I think you could do it faster and scale it better without. I think you should probably have a copywriter anyhow to kind of build your library, if you will, and then use that base to tweak as you go through the year or on an ongoing basis. Probably revisit it, have the copywriter clean it up once a year, kind of thing, and let the tech and run it through a tech engine. But the tech should be making you more efficient. You shouldn't be sitting there looking at the ROI, wondering what you're really getting out of it when a human could do it as effectively. That's kind of why we invest in tech, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, automation, it scales up, it gets cheaper and cheaper. At least it should. This is sort of the opposite, which I think is kind of interesting. But I think that the trick with this is the first thing you do is you build a strategy and templates, and you hire someone kind of high end who can do all that for you, and then you can get a copywriter for kind of low cost to just turn the crank based on your model, and then once you revisit it.
Nice.
Right, and I think, but there's one issue, which is attracting candidates, and then another conversation I'm having as far as what's new, what's I don't know that this is new, but it's getting an increased level of attention is eliminating bias, or I should say reducing bias, and creating job descriptions that are more inclusive, and that I think the practitioners that I'm sitting with are realizing that it's not all a tech solution there. There's a lot of process and a lot of training and a lot of culture that needs to be built around that. But tech could help move the needle a great deal. And I'm hearing a lot of folks looking for that, not finding it quite yet. A lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts coming from vendors, but I haven't seen anybody with a piece of tech that really addresses that. And it's probably because it's about more than just job descriptions, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's your company culture. You have to make sure it aligns with. I mean, my thing is with the job ad, it's what's promised in the job ad has to line up with your culture. And if people see something in an ad that makes you sound like the coolest, funnest company on the planet, and really interesting, innovative, and you're going to grow a great career there, and everyone gets along, and it's collegial, and you go to work there, and it's a factory of cubes, and everyone hates their job. That's actually worse in some ways than a boring job ad, because at least they come with their expectations kind of lined up and leveled. So you got to make sure whatever tool we actually kind of figure out and create, you have to have some cultural input. You have to make sure you sort of level it up and down so it matches what you're looking for, and create a unique voice that ties to who you are.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice. All right, guys, good stuff. Let's move on to Indeed, because they are quite busy in this space. Another acquisition yesterday, so good timing on our part here. They bought Resume.com. And the first thing I thought about was just it's instant lead generation on the job seeker side for them. They're really on the heels of the Glassdoor acquisition, they're really buying up all the users and traffic they can find, right?
Yeah,
it seems to be.
Yeah, I think everything I've seen and read about the Glassdoor acquisition and Indeed, it's been through the lens of the job board lens, the job aggregator lens, the marketplace lens, and I think people need to step back from it. Look at Recruit Holdings, who's doing the acquiring, and this is a multi-billion-dollar Japanese company. They made one other acquisition recently, which was Workopolis in Canada, which is like that is the job board for Canada, right?
Yep.
So what have they acquired? Data. And when you look at, I've only had a couple of briefings with Recruit Holdings. I've talked to some other folks that know them pretty well. Their business in Japan is largely, strategic, based on the fact that they have more recruitment data, more data on basically Japan's population than anyone else. And that's what I think. This is not grab advertising plays, and it's not a short-term play. It's a long-term play, looking at how different North America operates, or the rest of the world operates outside of Japan, and that's what's happening here. I think look for this to all fold together, but not anytime real soon, regardless of what they're saying in their press releases. And it's going to be a data play.
Totally. And I think Recruit.com, and that's an excellent point. Indeed is just one part of their arsenal. They own a lot of property and technology. They own the Japanese market. If you want to hire in Japan, you go through Recruit.com. I forgot who was telling this last week at Recruit DC. Chris, it may have been you.
Yeah. We're talking about the Japanese market. Yeah.
And the Deloitte story. Was that you told me about that? Or?
Deloitte story. No, I was talking about the fact that resume you have paper resumes, not electronic resumes.
Okay, yeah, right. So there was a different conversation. But it was a holiday conversation, and apparently Deloitte did a bunch of hiring last year in Japan. They wanted to, and they were looking to hire 5,000 heads at some certain specialty skill set or locations. And they went to Recruit.com and said, "Is this realistic?" And Recruit said, "No, there are only 3,100 people like that who will take that kind of a job in Japan." So Deloitte saying and the numbers are wrong. It could be 50 and 31 or 500. The point is, Deloitte changed their hiring models based on Recruit's advice. So they basically changed their business plan for Japan based on what Recruit told them. That's power. That's power, right? Yeah. And I don't think they're going to achieve that kind of dominance in the States. There's too large of a country. There's too much going on. It's a little more diverse as far as industries and complexity and kind of competitors. You've got Google, et cetera. But I think, as along with the data, they're going for a bit more control and influence.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting now. What that means, like what the hell does that mean? Data play. I don't know, but I do know that they're very smart and they're very patient, and so I would expect to see some really interesting moves with those different properties, however they organize it. Over the next, it's not going to be 12 months. It could, 12 to 36 months.
Yeah. So what did you guys think of the overall, the Glassdoor acquisition? I mean, a lot of speculation out there in terms of what they're going to do with that. Some people think, Glassdoor is going to go away. I kind of think that maybe all the Indeed reviews would be powered by Glassdoor. All the jobs on Glassdoor would be powered by Indeed. I don't know. What do you guys think about all this merger and kind of, because those two products really overlap to me. They're kind of do the same thing. One's known for reviews, one's known for jobs, but they both have aspects of both. So, what do you guys think?
I think it surprised some of the folks at Indeed, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think some of them were surprised at it because they were rolling out products. And just a couple months ago, we had some of these folks in our office, and they were rolling out some highly competitive products for Glassdoor. They're planning on pushing out later this year on their roadmap. So I'm sure the top layer of Indeed wasn't shocked. I'm sure they're part of it, but I think it was a pretty tightly held secret, which I think is interesting. They overlap, but they've got strengths in different areas, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they pick their strongest points and chuck the rest, or kind of recombine them a bit. I mean, I think about they're not going to kill it. I mean, hell, Simply Hired is still running, believe it or not.
Yeah. Someone told me the Glassdoor job listings don't convert as well as like Indeed would, because people go there for the reviews and don't necessarily stay around for the job listings. Have you guys heard any of that?
I don't have any data on that, but but anecdotally, when I talk to folks that are outside of this bubble, right? This influencers, analysts, whatever you want to, bloggers, people who spend a lot of time talking about this stuff. When I speak to someone outside our industry, if they don't go to Glassdoor to find a job. They go to Indeed to find a job. They go to LinkedIn when they're actively looking, right?
Yep.
But they don't generally use these tools in the way that the vendors are aspiring for them to be used. So I think it makes good common sense to me, but I can't say that I have data that says that the jobs perform in one place versus another. But I think it does make sense to me that if someone does have some data, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into some funding news, George. Give us tell us where we are for the year, how much has been invested in HRtech, and then kind of give us some rundown on some of the highlights from you.
Sure. Well, it's we continue. This is calendar Q2. We've got about a month left, and we continue to move through the year at a really strong clip here. There's a lot of investment pouring into HR technology across the board. So year to date, let me do this differently. So in Q2, we've currently, this is VC that I track. I don't track acquisitions. I don't fold that into this. These are venture capital rounds from angel and seed upward. So there's no public company investment here, just to be what I'm tracking.
Yeah.
And in Q2, we currently have about 462, we'll call it 463 million, which is Q2 is bigger than any quarter last year by the smallest margin. The biggest quarter in 2017, Q2 is 100 million. More than that. I think that was Q3. Now,
that's wild.
Q1 of this year was 795 million, so it brings our year to date to 1.257 billion. And will Q2 catch up to Q1 with a month left to go in calendar Q2? It could, but I have it's hard to predict these things. But it's clear that Q1 wasn't an anomaly. I was wondering if that'll just be a giant blip on the radar screen. But Q2, while it's just a little over half of Q1, it's still bigger than any quarter we had last year. So it's pretty cool. The biggest investments in Q2.
It's the golden age of it's the golden age of HRtech funding, I think.
Yeah, I think so. It's getting a lot of attention. The biggest company, the biggest round was a C round that went to Checker, who does background checks, basically. That was a 100 million.
Wow.
Some that were close to that, Percival, which is a sort of core HR collaboration and communication tool, was 40 million. Another collaboration and comms tool was Parsable. That was in the last couple of weeks for another 40 million. But the categorically, if we look at Q2, talent acquisition is at about 232 of that 463 million, 22 deals there, average deal size of about 10.5 million. And the category subcategory that leads within talent acquisition still, and it surprises me every day, is job boards and job board or job board / marketplace. And and I think it makes a lot of sense when you step back. You might look at job boards and roll your eyes a little bit, but that's where the consumers are. And you've got a two-sided marketplace. You've got consumers and corporations, and it's transactional. It can start with a single job posting, and then other services that marketplaces may bring to the table for like freelancers or servicing a particular demographic, kind of increase the value from there. And then you've got subscription models on top of that. So from an investor's perspective, it's an easy to understand model. It's a straightforward model. It's a big market because you've got potentially the global workforce or the workforce of whatever region you're talking about. So I think it makes a lot of sense, but it's just, there's so many of these investments. It's staggering when you look at it like that.
And what that tells me, at least my gut, is that I think the market or the investors in the market don't know exactly what the hell is going on. And I don't mean to sound flip about that, but work is changing. I mean, the traditional ways of work, we all know this, I think, at this point. Work is getting unbundled. It's increasingly more in the buzzwords you want, gigs, Uberization, whatnot, is rolling in. So I think the reason Checker got the money got was because they're focused on part of it's staffing, short-term projects, things like that, and how can you do rapid background checking and somebody you're going to roll in for a part-time project for a few weeks or a few months, and it's got to be easy and light. But I also think that the investors are kind of machine gunning at products because the labor market is so incredibly tight. Work is shifting. We've got these weird megatrends coming up. You've got globalization, but also ultranationalism coming up. I mean, it's really confusing. Where things are going to be in 4, 5, 10 years, who's going to win. We just don't know yet as far as the approach and the products.
I mean, the last show we did this back in January. I remember asking, are we in an HRtech bubble? And now we're even farther along in terms of the money being poured into this space. And you said machine gunning, Martin, which I think is an apt analogy there. A lot of these tools don't have a lot of traction. They have a few clients here and there, but none of them are, have gone that mainstream yet, from what I've seen. So it's definitely, there's definitely, some companies are going to be going out of business in the next year or two.
You could be right. I think there are a lot of zombies out there right now, is what I tend to call them. Like they might have taken a seed or like a small A round, and they've generated just enough to kind of keep the lights on and keep going, and their investors might be patient. And I think a lot of people talk about consolidation. I don't really see that as people want it's like 1990s thinking from my perspective. The market hasn't consolidated in the last 20 years. I don't know what would drive that today. So, and what I mean by that is you might see a bunch of these guys go under, or you might see acquisitions, like we've seen some acquisitions, but every time you have an acquisition, 5 startups come in and replace, fill that void. And the barrier to entry continues getting lower. So, if you have an idea for a better mousetrap, whether that's for recruiting or payroll or core HR or whatever, if you've got an idea and the access to the tools to develop these applications, the tools to take them to market, and even capital, if you're looking for it, access to capital, the barrier's low. So I don't necessarily see consolidation coming like we used to talk about it, where it was a different. Back at Brass Ring, I was in very early at Brass Ring, and we thought the market would consolidate. Those were conversations we were having in 1998, right? I don't see where the market's consolidated. So
no, the only people consolidating is Recruit. I mean, everybody else is pretty, standing pat.
Yeah, I know those are the big headlines, and the job board space, Chris, is a great example because you'll have that consolidation maybe at the top with the bigger brands, but there's, and to Martin's point, work is changing, and there will be thousands and thousands of niche job boards and job boards / marketplaces that are serving different markets that will, I think, we'll see some big brands come out of this. Like, you've got Work Market and Upwork and some others. There could be some I think you might see some existing brands that you might view as on the ropes right now that were, like, Monster was acquired. I don't know what they'll do. I don't know what Ronstadt will end up doing with Monster long term, but they kind of seem poised for a little bit of a resurgence, right? So it's interesting. It's just that they're for as much consolidation as we've seen in the job board space, we still see a proliferation of niche job boards, and a lot of those are lifestyle businesses. There's nothing to sneeze at. Multi-million-dollar businesses that do quite well, and they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, and you're seeing a lot of private equity money go into them too. Whether it's Career Builder or Dykes just sold one of their hospitality boards to a PE firm. So you're seeing these PE firms come in now and just basically, take that because they're cash cows at this point. These kind of established job boards that have been in the market for 20 years. So you get these PE firms like that cash flow overall.
Yeah.
Another trend I've kind of noticed too is that all this HR funding is happening overseas, George. That was a Reminder just came out, that French one. There was another one about I thought was similar to Fairy Godboss. A lot of Me Too kind of overseas plays. They're taking the U.S. model and getting funding over there, right?
Well, that tends to be what happens.
That's true. France, for whatever reason, in the last couple of quarters has really ticked up. They've had like a dozen deals this year, and some of them are small, but not all of them. And one we have to mention is a job board just because of their name. They're called Welcome to the Jungle, so they get a. Oh, yeah. I've got to mention them just because.
Yeah, that's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, explain that one again.
I have no idea what their. It was a couple weeks ago, and I remember reading through their stuff and saying, "Okay, it's a job board." I think they might do like entry-level hires or internships and things like that. Which
okay, yeah,
maybe it's appropriate.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that was very geared to millennials and Gen Z. They talk about working, like about tribes and everything else. It's very cool. For that level. Well, I think France is interesting, but just to play this a little bit too, to your point, because it's very challenging. I think part of it's practical. It's really challenging to hire somebody and then fire them in France. If you want to hire somebody, if you have 50 employees, you have to go through a work council, and that means some of your employees have to sign off on the hire, whether you like it or not. And if some of the work councils cousin was interviewing and didn't get the job, then they could put the kibosh on the person you want to hire. So it's challenging that way. And then firing somebody takes months and lots of work. So while the gig stuff is not as prevalent yet in France, it's starting to scale up all of a sudden. Because a lot of corporates are starting to say, well, instead of doing full-time hires, let's do workarounds. Let's do contract. Let's do gig level work. And the tools I'm seeing coming up in France seem to be kind of geared more toward that model, solving that problem. So I think I've been watching France actually. It's funny you were too, George. There may be some stuff coming there that may actually address some of the larger global problems around how do we deal with the fragmented workforce. So it's kind of interesting because their approach to work, the government approach to the way they overregulate hiring and firing, it's forcing different solutions, which is then forcing new technology.
Yeah,
which is always interesting.
There's a lot of new stuff coming in on the gig market side. I talked to one of the co-founders of Winolo a few shows ago, who just got about $13 million. They're in several major cities now. You've got stuff like Shift Gig. So from a consolidation predictability standpoint, I think that market is kind of ripe for consolidation. One of the players taking over, a few of the others, and really, bringing up the gig economy job market onto their platform, because that's one area that's growing fast, and that's one area I definitely would see consolidation happening in the next couple of years. Any thoughts there?
Well, I don't think we've really seen that opportunity cap out yet. I think the last number I saw was like 40% of the workforce was contingent or gig or contract. The new term is independent, the independent worker. So it brings a few different models into that. And I think there's as I sit with the HR and the talent folks, it comes up again and again, and it's not just IT or shop floor or temp related disciplines. It's across the enterprise. And one thing that's happening is HR and recruiting are now starting to take that back under their wing, because it used to be part of purchasing or finance handled a lot of that spend, and it was really pushed into the line organization. But now the experience that you're having with candidates and employees is just as important, because it's such a big part of the teams that they've got to take ownership of the process from start, from pre-hire through contract. There are companies giving contractors benefits now, and that's a whole other minefield of problems. But but there's this is going to get really big, and if people that aren't paying attention to that need to really start thinking about it, because it's going to be a big part of life for us, if it isn't already.
No, I think it's gonna. I think we're going to see more and more fragmentation. Some ways coming up, more point solutions, because you're this gig workers. You're talking talent management. You're talking different kinds of onboarding, different communication, different alumni levels. It's the George part, the benefit piece of it too. It's not simply recruiting, hiring. You're done. You pass them along. You're almost functioning more like someone with almost like a staffing agency model, right? Where you're a recruiter, but you've got your stable people you turn to for projects. Your client partner calls up and says, "We're doing a big IT project," so you know who to call, and you're sort of immediate and the bigger external. Well, I think internal recruiting will start adapting more of a staff model approach for the gig workers. The same way that corporate recruiting over the last 10 years has adopted more of a contingency recruitment model, but more for perm hiring.
Yeah, I met with a healthcare organization a couple of weeks ago, and if I don't know how aware everybody is about this, but a lot of the nurses that you deal with in hospitals are, they're on contract, they're traveling, they're gig workers, and this hospital created an internal staffing agency, and it's not. Right now, it's focused on improving the process internally, but they're going to take it out to the market. And so that's really interesting, right? You think about other disciplines where there's a large, community of contractors or temp workers. You've got this internal recruiting function that now, can start to look like a profit center. So everything's turned upside down, and we need to kind of look at everything from with a new set of eyes, because that's how that's where the innovation's going to happen, is in the field, with people reacting and adapting to these new realities.
Yeah, that's a good segue into my next topic, which is kind of innovation in the space. Particularly around texting. I was just thinking that, why aren't we seeing more ATSs and other players really get more involved with texting as kind of a feature, right? For instance, when are we going to see ATSs adapt, apply by text into their product, things like that, or even job alerts by text? I mean, I think a lot of companies are missing out on this trend and feature that people are communicating with. So, you guys have any thoughts on texting and in HRtech?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think it's the U.S. ATSs are worse at it, especially the big ones, Connection, Braxton, and Kaleo. They're terrible, but they're terrible with all kinds of stuff. But the texting is high in that list. some of the newer tools that are they're scaling up to do a better job with it. But I can think about there was an ATS it was a weird Canadian marketplace combo out of South Africa, I think, where SMS is huge and it's a standard feature.
Yeah.
So part of it's sort of driven by culture and acceptance. Yeah, our ATSs in the States are not. They're like I said, the big ones are not great. The ones that are individually coming up are catching up with the rest of the world. But you're right. It's kind of odd that it's not a standard feature.
Yeah.
I think that the CRMs, recruitment marketing platforms, do a better job at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think everybody. Yeah, you're right. It's coming. I think the more prevalent ATSs and recruitment marketing platforms, they're going to move a little more slowly than than a startup can. But it's coming. It's there. It's on the roadmaps. You mentioned the iCIMS acquisition. Earlier this year. Yeah, and so. It'll take them a while to get that, integrated in a way that feels like it's part of the platform, but it's coming. I think a lot of what I see out there, to your point, Chris, like I sit through some demos and briefings with smaller vendors, and I'll ask them sometimes just a thought in the back of my head, like, isn't this a feature?
Yeah.
This doesn't feel like a product. And I think a lot of those, you're going to see some acquisitions happen, and you're going to see some roadmaps start to fulfill this. I wouldn't be surprised if this time next year, you see more folks with text to apply and more integrated, texting into the process.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, let's take a quick break, guys. I tell you about my other sponsor today, which is RoboRecruiter and their recruiting chatbot technology. RoboRecruiter's job vet campaigns help recruiters vet and select candidates for particular roles and make it easy to quickly build conversations that are both personalized to each user, such as asking them kind of pre-screening questions before they apply. So head over to roborecruiter.ai and tell them you heard it on RecTech. So, guys, a few more questions before we wrap up the show. Do your eyes roll over when you hear the term Bitcoin job board these days?
Bitcoin. Most folks don't understand what it does, or why to use it. Yeah, I get kind of glazed over. Bitcoin, GDPR, it's just a flavor of the month, buzzword.
Yeah, you've got like a job.com moving over into that space, and it's basically just a job board with blockchain, built on blockchain. So, George, what were you saying?
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of demonstrated value there yet. It's super hype right now, So Bitcoin, is one thing. Blockchain is a lot of people are excited about it being the future. I'm not sure if it's the future in recruiting and HR or not.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it really transfers, but I'm watching.
The only place I can see it is background checking technology. Yeah, there might be something there.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it's fuzzy. The Magic 8-Ball says, huh?
Yeah, I've already gotten pitched to be an advisor to a few of these firms, and I'm like, I just don't see the value there for the employer or the seeker.
Yeah, and it might be, I know that one of the big selling points for blockchain is privacy and security and control. But when you start to, I know you don't want to talk about GDPR, but when you start to talk about these, requirements that are escalating around the world around privacy, how do you? It just starts to really get confusing to me, and I think the folks who would be really investing in this, the employers, I don't see them really worried about blockchain for HR right now. I don't see that. they're not going to chase blockchain. They're chasing business outcomes, and so we're way ahead of the market on that one, I think.
I mean, I think with terminal mobility might have some applications, and I can see that underpinning some kind of neat stuff there. But to George's point, it's the engine under the hood. The buyers don't give a crap about it. They want to buy their car,
right?
That they can touch and use and drive around in. But maybe background checking, maybe terminal mobility, some pieces like that. Maybe alumni network somehow verifying that you really are who you say you are and you've done what you've done. But I think it's a stretch to even from my brain to even understand how it would apply to even to power tools at this point.
Yeah. I wonder if one day LinkedIn will be powered on blockchain or something. I don't know. It would make some sense there maybe. Protecting that data.
It's possible they could use it for just like the references, things like that too, to kind of verify your backgrounds, job work history. But
all right.
I'm more annoyed by the doc.io emails than I am the GDPR.
Yeah, I get those every day.
I'm just thinking of blockchain.
Doc is they're positioning themselves as the LinkedIn for blockchain or something. I think I read.
I think I've been able to block them by now, but it took a while.
Nice. AI guys, either of you know any employers using AI effectively? If so, how?
Speaking of buzzwords, I mean, no one's using AI. No one. They're using pieces of AI. They're using some machine learning, they're using some NLP, but there's no actual AI in recruiting. There's not. But it's a total buzzword. And the people who talk about it typically either they're trying to sell you something that doesn't really work, or they're a buyer who heard the word AI somewhere and they assume they have to buy a robot or something. But pulling back from that, chatbot tech's interesting. I think it's overhyped, but I think it's useful. Semantics. I mean, there's some machine learning you can build with some of the search tools, the hire tools and whatnot. That works. It's a piece of tech that you plug in. I don't see anything really mind blowing yet, George. What do I mean? Maybe I'm being cynical because I'm old. I've seen too much. I've seen too much, guys.
I think it's. I think you're appropriately cynical. I believe that the future. In the future, the fairly short-term future, we'll see more and more effective uses of automation, AI, machine learning. But we're at a place where, if it is happening, it's happening in, think of the companies who have the volume and the data who could actually capitalize on this. So who are the companies that you think of when you think of AI? Google, Amazon, the datacom companies like Cisco and other. You can be confident that they're exploring, experimenting. They've got like skunkworks stuff happening with predictive analytics tied into machine learning and behavioral stuff and AI, and they're doing really interesting things. But outside of that, it's really early, and that's where when I go and I do these roundtable discussions, and when I speak with these leaders, they're just as skeptical as you, Martin, as to what the future looks like with this, and they're looking for the machine to bring them insights, not decisions. So, so how does that play out in the market? I think we'll know, in a couple of years, and everything else is just, speculation and the beginning of a hike cycle right now.
And I do think that some of the enemy cut you off. Keep going.
I'm done.
I was talking over you so bad. I think the VCs, and I know one specifically, who are building their own internal tools, and they're investing a lot of money, and they're hiring some really phenomenal engineers from Facebook and Google, some early hires from Google and whatnot, to build really complex tools to do exactly what George said, kind of guide their recruiters for their investment companies toward the right people. Not the exact person, but at least saying out of these 500, we can narrow them down to these 40 should be the ones you're looking at based on their social graph, their behaviors, all that kind of stuff. And it's at least one that I'm aware of makes Intello look like a job board, an old job board from the 90s. As far as what it can actually do, the thing is incredible. But it's never going to get commercialized. They're going to keep for themselves. It gives them an edge over their competitors in the valley, because they're targeting $500,000, $1 million a year software engineers who are incredibly sought after and transformative, and they're in a blood fight with other investments. But they'll never release this. So there is tech being built that's kind of creepy and crazy, and probably violates GDPR in 5 million directions. But they're going to keep it quiet and focus there. I don't think we'll see that scale for a while.
Yeah. Well, I think we saw a glimpse of what recruiting could be with that Google Duplex launch. Did you guys watch the video? Listeners,
yeah, that's
pretty funny.
Yeah, listeners, for those of you who haven't Google Duplex, and it basically was a robot calling a hair salon, I believe, and making an appointment, and actually interacting with the person who answered the phone. So I can just imagine a robot phone screener being in place at recruiting departments all across the country and doing the initial phone screen like that. I mean, also things like sales as well, like biz dev. That's kind of where my mind raced to when I saw that video. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, it was like a lot of this stuff. It was exciting and creepy at the same time. It was like, there were 2 calls made. The first one was that hair salon. It was like a straightforward appointment, and the thing that impressed me was how conversational it was, and it just sounded like 2 people talking. The second call was to a restaurant to make a reservation, and the machine. So the person on the other end was really confused about what day were they looking for, what time, and Google Duplex hung right in there, explained it. Then they said, well, you don't have enough people for a reservation, and Google asked, how long's the wait time at that, on that day at that time normally? And I was like, that's amazing. It clearly wasn't on rails. It reacted to what I was impressed. I think
they're going to have an API for that too, which is nice.
Oh boy. Well, so I feel like there's in a high volume recruiting environment, the same place where the chatbots are getting traction right now, right? High volume, highly repetitive, and think about scheduling. Scheduling is still a big nut to crack for large enterprise environment. So if you can put a tool in that space, it's exciting to a lot of employers. There's a lot of money getting sunk into those areas, but the point where it starts to look like candidate engagement, that's where all of the leaders that I'm talking to today, and this may be a generational thing because they tend to look like Gen X, they're uncomfortable outsourcing that to the machine.
Yeah.
They want that's where they want the recruiter to engage, and so I think it's hard. We're starting to cross the line with Duplex into how far do we go with this? So I don't have the answer. I just know that's where I think you might see your dream come true, Chris. There might be robots scheduling all of our interviews, but I don't know how much further it can go than that.
Yeah, people still hire people, so it's gonna end there, I think.
Yeah, I would be asking. Are you a robot? Are you a human?
For volume hiring, I mean, if you're doing high volume transactional stuff, you're looking more for efficiency and scale, so that you maybe want to give away some of the human element. And frankly, people who are coming to work for you, they're typically short-termers. They may not be looking for massive human interaction just real quick. Just get me in the seat so I can do the work and move on. So that it may be the next generation of Gen Z, whatnot, who are more comfortable with the approach, who are more flexible workers, or whatever you want to call it, who will be okay with it because it makes they're a lot more efficient too. They're not being talked about human. They can talk to the robot, figure their schedule out, say boom, bang, bang, here's my project, and then roll into it. They may not want that level of human interaction that recruiters think they want. We tend to think that everyone wants to talk to us. It's not always the case, believe it or not.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up. We're coming close to the end of the show. George LaRocque, Martin Burns, thanks very much for joining me today. Great conversation as always. Tell people where to connect with you guys.
This is George. You can connect with me at hrwins.com and find everywhere that I'll be and all my reports from there.
And this is Martin, so it's HireClicks.com and emails martin@hireclicks.com. Simple as that.
Awesome, guys. Well, that will do it for this edition of the RecTech podcast. Thanks again to our sponsors, HireTool and RoboRecruiter. Don't forget you subscribe to this show via iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and Stitcher Radio. Guys, thanks for listening, and remember, always be recruiting. See you next time.
Another episode of RecTech is in the books. Follow Chris on Twitter at Chris Russell or visit rectechmedia.com, where you can find the audio and links for this show on our blog. RecTech Media helps both HRtech firms and employers to get more clients or candidates through our consulting practice and online tools. So be sure to check out our sites like recruiting headlines, job fairing, and more to stay up to date on what's happening in recruiting. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon on the next episode of RecTech, the Recruiting Technology Podcast.